In today's business world, change is the only constant, and mastering transformation is the ultimate key to success. Welcome to Shift and Thrive. I'm your host, Natalie Nathanson. Each week, we'll bring you conversations with CEOs who delve into how they successfully drove critical change in their organization. This show is sponsored by Magnitude Consulting, bringing you the thinking power of a growth consultancy and the getting it done power of a full-service B2B marketing agency. Today's episode continues our spotlight on go-to-market transformation, conversations designed to help CEOs rethink how sales, marketing, customer experience, and product must work together to drive smarter growth. After the amazing response to our first go-to-market episode, it's clear this is a topic executives are hungry to explore more deeply. So we'll be weaving more of these conversations into the show. And to do that with us today, I'm so excited to welcome today's guest. He's someone who's led go-to-market from all sides. He's been a founder with experience raising VC funds. He's served as a board member, and importantly for today's discussion, a revenue leader who's built go-to-market teams through rapid growth, from seed stage through Series B and beyond. He's helped companies optimize product-led growth motions, build up enterprise sales functions, and has stood up brand new functions across sales, marketing, customer experience, and RevOps. Today, he's the Chief Revenue Officer of a fast-growing vertical SaaS company, Tithely, where he's bringing that full-stack experience to a new customer base and motion. Brad McGinity, welcome to the show.
It's great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I really wanted to start off drawing on some of the experience that you've had leading go-to-market and unpacking a transformation story. So I know one of the areas you shared with me is in a product-led growth company layering in enterprise sales. So I would love to hear from you. I guess first, what was the dynamic? What were you building and why? And then we can delve into some of the lessons you've learned.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined a company with HR tech software in the performance management space back in 2017 called 15.5. And 15.5 at that point had been around since kind of late 2012, early 2013, and had grown decently, had a customer base of around 1,000 customers at the time, all acquired in a self-service motion. Now we would call that product-led growth, but back then we just called it self-service, the way that, MailChimp and QuickBooks and so many other great software companies were doing it. So customers would just come to our website, they'd sign up for a free 30-day trial. If they liked it, they'd put in their credit card number and away they'd go. We had a small team of customer success and customer support that would help those customers, but largely they were on their own. And a few of the competitors had gone out and raised some venture capital and had hired direct sales teams and were selling it direct to customers, and they were having a lot of success. Much bigger deal sizes, I presume higher retention. I don't know, I didn't work at those companies, but presume higher retention and things like that. And so David Hassel, 15.5 CEO, decided that he wanted to bring a direct sales motion into 15.5. And so I was hired to be the company's first vice president of sales. And so they took about 9 months to find me or to find the person for the role. And so in that time, they'd hired a couple salespeople and a couple BDRs and one account manager. And so I joined a small team of 6 people. So they had some pipeline, they had some deals they were trying to work. There was a consultant who was helping out a little bit, and but sales were slow, and most of the customers were coming through on the self-service motion. And so what I did over the course of the next several years was build out a robust customer success organization, a robust sales development, account executive, sales function. We had an account management, which very much for us was hunting on the farm because we had so much expansion opportunity. Led marketing, built professional services, partnerships, all kind of stuff. But the key in the first kind of month, I should say the first quarter, because sales immediately just took off when we put in place just some of the core best practices of sales. And so, I sat down with Tim and Carson, the 2 sales reps. I think, I started on a Monday, and on Tuesday we sat down and okay, walk me through the sales motion. And so then on Wednesday, we rebuilt all the opportunity stages, clear entry criteria, exit criteria. We put weights on each of the stages of the funnel. We created some fields on the opportunity record in Salesforce. of what's the next step on the deal, what's the next date we're going to do this next step. And I told the guys, we wrote all that down in a Google document or wherever we put it, and told all the guys, like, okay, go take the pipeline, clean it up. And on Friday of week 1, we did our first ever deal reviews. And we had a really clean pipeline and a bunch of deals to go look through. And so from there forward, it was a process of being able to identify customers of what size based on the firmographic information they were telling us in the sign-up form, and routing those people directly to an account executive or to an SDR team to qualify them, or just directly into the product or a self-service motion. And things kind of evolved from there. So by the time I left in December of 22, we had a self-service PLG motion with a growth team built out. I think that team was 6 people at the time. We had an SMB sales team that was working customers under, I want to say 100 employees. And then we had the lower mid-market team working like 100 to 500, and an upper mid-market team working like 500 to 1,000, and an enterprise team working 1,000 plus. So kind of all these different motions and running in parallel, each kind of following a process that made sense for their part of the business.
Well, that sounds like a lot of kind of evolution and maturation of the sales organization. I'm curious, you mentioned sales took off immediately when putting some of those foundations in place. Is there something in particular that you attribute that success to, or was it like really like getting all the foundations in place and working through industry best practices?
Yeah, so the boring answer is probably the more accurate answer. A lot of it was just like working through industry best practices. At the time, 15.5 had a good product, and there's really good product. I say at the time, which makes it sound like it's not good now, but it's pretty now too. But back in 2017, there was a pretty high degree of product market fit, and they were just customers, these HR buyers. They just needed some help, and so a lot of this was, as I said before, like getting in place really clear opportunity stages and getting Salesforce configured in a way so that we could have clarity on the pipeline. I didn't really know the product. I never sold to HR before, but I knew how to do a discovery call. I knew how to negotiate a deal. And so taught the team a really clear discovery call framework. And so when they'd finish a discovery call, they knew, exactly what this customer's pain points were, what the outcomes they were looking for, the barriers that were preventing them from accomplishing those things, and so on and so on from there. So a lot of it was clear best practices. There was also an element of training that I brought into it, which I didn't mention before. We started to do sales training sessions every Wednesday. We were just teaching sales skills. I say we, is me. And I was flying out to San Francisco all the time. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and so I would write the training on like Tuesday on the airplane. We'd do the training session on Wednesday, and we were doing it every single week. And that's when we were doing the training on how to do a discovery call, how to negotiate a deal, how to present pricing, how to do objection handling and stuff. So it is very much one of these stories of like, it's very boring, but having a really clear process, knowing what the fundamentals are, not skipping steps, and just kind of building from the foundation and working your way up through the process.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good example in that, the foundations and kind of going through the blocking and tackling can feel like, the unsexy part of the function, but it works. And I think it can be so tempting to skip some of those steps or kind of want to jump quickly right into like where you see the impact and feel the impact. But it's all those building blocks that ultimately kind of make it all work.
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know if you see this now with their clients, but like there's a lot of companies today struggling to build pipeline. It's like, okay, well, I think we'll talk about AI later on, but like, okay, we got to get some AI in place to go increase the personalization of our outreach. It's like, there's nothing wrong with that. But also, you're not really clear as a marketing organization, as a sales organization, on the problems that you're solving for your customer and what the outcomes are. Right? Like that's way more fundamental than getting in place like a cool AI tool so you can increase personalization, right? Like, so we talk about some of those foundations and fundamentals. So much of it starts with like, what is the problem we're solving for the customer? And these things are boring, but
Yeah,
they're not nearly as sexy.
right. I've had a lot of conversations around that lately, and I think I've had more conversations in the last couple months around the importance of foundations than maybe like last year combined. And I think it is because of that temptation around right, like AI is the new shiny object, and yes, there's tons you can and should be doing with it, but the reality is like getting that readiness in place. And we did that for our own business, doing that with some clients around right, making sure your database is clean and in a good place and has all the kind of fields that you'll need, documenting your processes, making sure it's all the right systems in place. So again, it's these kind of foundations that are not as exciting to work on, but like have to happen.
Mhm.
And then the other point that you raised is around, right, like, do you have the right ICP? Do you have the right kind of messaging? Do you understand kind of your competitive positioning? And all of those, I think, before you bring in tools that help kind of accelerate and scale up what you're doing, is
Yeah.
making sure that you're pointing that scale in the right direction.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. It happens all the time that we try to scale things that aren't inherently bad, but we haven't really studied and understood it.
Right. Yeah. I'm curious too if there was any sort of like cultural shift in the organization that was kind of needed, or any internal resistance, just kind of building up a very different kind of sales motion.
Yeah, there was some of that actually. Not as much within, as I said when I started, there were 6 people in sales. So it wasn't so much with like the sales team that was there. But and it was a small company at the time. I think there was like 33 people, 32 people, something like that. And so there was a little bit of nervousness around, um, we've never had a VP of sales. 15 was not a lifestyle company, but it was a company with a really strong culture of people who cared about one another. And I had to make some personnel changes in the first couple of months. And there was one person, this is very interesting to me still. I still kind of like this, what? But this person, so I let somebody go, and involuntary, whatever. And then we pulled together the whole company in the San Francisco office with not a lot of people and said like, hey, we just let this person go. Cause I think it had been the first time in several years that somebody had been fired. And somebody who was, one of the remaining employees in a different department said, well, why weren't we told in advance that this was going to happen? I was like, uh, this is confidential information. Like, you wouldn't want it to be told if it was you, and the reasons behind all this stuff, like, are not information that is going to be shared with you and should be shared with you. But this is very much like kind of family culture. And so I spent a lot of time, again, commuting over to San Francisco and just spending time with people to give people the opportunity to see that, like, yes, I have the title of VP of sales and I'm very much focused on growing this thing. But I'm also very focused on culture and building a great company, great company culture that's going to be a great place to work. And the both and of like you can have performance while also really valuing people and their human dignity and all that kind of stuff. So there's some challenges there, and a lot of that was just um, truly relationship building and giving people an opportunity to see the results, but also understand that we're not doing this in like some soulless, heartless kind of way. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah, yeah. It's like part of the broader change management that goes far beyond kind of the operational and like technical things to implement is
Yeah,
all of those components.
yeah.
I'm curious to ask if there was any sort of shifts to the ICP, like the ideal client profile, from kind of self-serve into enterprise, and how did you and the team go about that?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a shift as we were moving up market. And part of it that's interesting is that we never abandoned the self-service motion, right? And one of the things that was really neat about 15.5 is that it was employee engagement, performance management, and kind of manager software. You can manage OKRs, you could do weekly one-on-ones, run performance reviews, do engagement surveys. And so really you had to have 2 people to have it make sense. You had to have an employee and a manager, but you didn't need the entire organization to use it. And so, we had a customer with 70,000 employees, and we had 11 different accounts that totaled up to around 1,600 users, right? So just like massive expansion potential for an enterprise-wide license agreement that we finally got done with that organization. But as we were moving up, we had historically sold to CEOs, right? It was CEOs who cared about kind of getting the visibility and transparency of employee data through this kind of weekly one-on-one process and managing their OKRs. It was just after I joined that we built the performance review software, and that really unlocked the opportunity for us inside of HR. And so really at the beginning, we didn't even think of ourselves as an HR tech company. I say at the beginning when I was there in 2017, not back in 2012, 2013. And so as we were moving up market, unlocking bigger budgets and selling to larger organizations, we had more of the product capabilities that we needed to do it. But also we'd call CEOs, and the CEO used to be our target buyer because they were a small company. And now the CEO is going, yeah, you got to talk to my HR leader. They're the right person for this. And so we built out value propositions, of course, for the CEO, but also for the HR leader and for the HR admin teams. And so that really became the target customer and the ICP over time.
Yeah, I think it's one of those areas where, like, hindsight's 2020 of like, what are the other markets we can serve? Who do we really sell to? But I think, right, like it adds more complexity every time you do that. If you still have the messaging for the CEOs, and that's kind of self-service in the smaller companies, and now HR and any kind of other like users or decision makers are getting IT involved. So I think it does become a lot more to kind of manage and keep the team across the different kind of go to market and kind of rev ops aligned on that too.
Yeah, I totally agree. When you're launching a new company or you're launching a new product, it's very, very tempting to kind of sell it to anybody who will buy it, but you've got limited resources. And when you do that, you really dilute the feedback that you're getting back from the market because they're all coming with these different opinions and biases, come because they have different perspectives on what the needs are. The more that you can narrow in into that target ICP, the you get a lot more signal in the feedback that you're getting. You can move much faster because you tighten the loops on how fast you can build new product, take it to market, get the feedback from the customers. But it takes a ton of discipline to say no to all the other potential opportunities that are sitting out there. And one of the things that we did do at 15.5, which I'm a really big believer in, is the idea of like the ideal customer, or what I like to call the target customer, versus the acceptable customer.
Mm.
Right. And so I think this is one of these like really important constructs as a sales leader or a marketing leader. It's like when we build marketing messaging, when we build our website, when we build our pricing and packaging, we are building it in pursuit of this very specific customer. And so for us, like at 15.5, we worked primarily with kind of desk workers, right? People who were behind computers working on projects. They had a pretty good degree of autonomy over their time and how they were going to spend it. We weren't as great for like manufacturing organizations and things like that. I think the more your job moved in that direction of kind of project and team based, the more valuable our product was to you. Well, we had some customers who were very much not in that air quotes ideal, but they came to us and they came inbound and they were very successful. And so I was like, okay, well, who's an acceptable customer to us? Well, our software is only in English. It's not in Japanese. So if you don't have any English speakers, like that's not an acceptable customer to us. Like, we can't do that. So we're not going to pursue some of these businesses, but we will absolutely accept them if they come inbound. And so that allowed us to say, okay, with our marketing resources, with our SDRs who are doing pursuit and they're trying to build pipeline and go prospecting, this is the bullseye that we need you focused on. But if you're in a different role, like you're an account executive, or you're in the customer success team, like we can widen that aperture of our bullseye out a little bit and say, hey, can we make this customer successful? Like if the answer is yes, based on how their business operates, like absolutely, we'll take them on as a customer. So this dichotomy between like the target customer versus the acceptable customer gets lost when we only talk about ICP, like because we forget that the I in ICP is ideal, right? And we're like,
Right.
we're only going to go after the ICP customer. It's like, well, we're never going to only go after the ICP customer. And then of course you get the flip side of that, which is like this kind of lack of focus of like, we'll just take everything. And then you can't get great signal out of the feedback that you're getting there. So.
Yeah. Yeah. When you talked about the discipline to kind of hold yourself to that, I think it can feel scary to kind of not try to be kind of all things to all people, but it's another kind of one of those like maturation milestones of being clear on who you can serve. I like the terminology you're using, an ideal customer versus acceptable customer.
Yep.
I often talk to folks about, when you the value of kind of honing in on your niche, whether it's a vertical or uh, maturity of the target org or whatnot, but making that distinction between who you can serve and who you proactively go after in your sales and marketing efforts. And so I think that's a similar kind of mindset of where do you kind of put your sales and marketing dollars and time and energy, and knowing that some other prospects will come through and they might be a good fit still, but needing to prioritize.
Yeah. Real quick, when you're working with your clients within the organization, what role or kind of person function do you find tends to be the hardest to convince to say no and have this high degree of focus? Is it like the sales leader that's it's the hardest to convince, the product leader, the CEO?
To like, where do you walk away from, or where do you put those stakes in
Yeah.
the ground?
Yeah, because we're like, oh, we can't walk away. That's a huge market over there. It's like, yeah, it is, but we have limited resources. We got to focus.
Yeah, I would say, it obviously depends a bit based on the organization, but the sales lead or the CEO. And I think it's a question of like where the company is from a revenue standpoint. What does the pipeline look like? And if it's sales lead that's under a lot of pressure for marketing to come in as a strategic exercise and say, okay, we actually need to narrow the market, or we need to like look at this a bit differently. Um, right. Immediately you think about what that's going to do to your own goals, your own success,
Yep.
the teams, etc. And I think for CEOs, especially if they're not accustomed to kind of a lot of the details in the go to market, but maybe come from a more technical background or the industry that they serve, that idea of narrowing again can feel scary.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to have a little bit of faith, like for those that don't have that experience from other organizations they've been a part of. So we do a lot of like education, and here's how that works for other companies, and to kind of pave the path for that. And then ultimately, like they see the impact, and then the next time around a situation like that comes up, those are not the people who are going to be the naysayers.
Yeah, a little bit easier. Yeah, you said the phrase earlier of just like nail your niche. That's like if you're gonna summarize like this whole conversation in like one phrase, that's it. Like nail the niche, which is hard. It's hard to nail a niche, but that's where it all grows from. Is there?
Yeah, very very well put. I want to shift gears a bit, Brad, and you've been in go to market long enough to, I'm sure, have seen some changes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious around areas that you think have shifted over time, and are there any kind of go to market beliefs or practices that are outdated? And what do you think should come in its place?
I'll probably say two things that are like very contradictory, but like contradict one another. That I tend to think. Um, so I realized earlier this year that this is my 19th year in SaaS. I've only sold SaaS. I've never sold software. Like when I came into the industry, it was still this like SaaS was like kind of this new thing, and like helping people migrate to the cloud and all that stuff. And I was so confused. Like, what are y'all talking about? Like everything is just online. Like all that exists is SaaS. So that was me back in the mid 2000s. So if we rewind to your prospecting back in 2005, 2006, 2007, doing inside sales, outside sales, right? It was very much kind of personalized emails, personalized phone calls. It was a manual process of reaching out to people. And then we fast forward to like I think I bought Sales Loft for the first time in 2014. And all of a sudden we were like the volume of content that you could send out in kind of this automated email with some personalization and some merge tags, right? And feed things back into your CRM, like the volume that we could do just exploded, right? And so then the sales team certainly was paying attention to the content they were sending out, but it was a lot more phone based prospecting. And And then we move into this world of like, people don't have desk phones anymore. They have caller ID on their smartphones and nobody answers the phone anymore. And so you have like this kind of dwindling thing happening with phone. But now like my email AI agent is just talking to like your Natalie's AI email agent, and like nobody's actually paying attention to the emails that are happening anymore. And so we cycle all the way back to like, hey, guess what? Relationships. Relationships still matter. And so there's this first thing of like, how do you really effectively build relationships with people, especially in inside sales? And with a lot of salespeople, software salespeople in particular, like they tend to be younger people who are earlier in their career. And now that we've been doing this remote hybrid work thing for 5, 6 years, like a lot of them have never worked in an office and sold face to face with a customer in any kind of outside sales environment. So we have like a whole generation of salespeople who aren't really equipped for relationship building sales, which is ultimately what builds pipeline in 2025. And so I do think that there's a lot to be said for kind of in-person events and dinners and that kind of stuff, which requires you to like get out of your office, which is like, oh, I'm going to like lose a day of productivity on a plane. Like, yes, you will. And you're going to get a bigger bang for your buck when you're there. And then there's this explosion of social media and LinkedIn. Social media is building relationships at scale, right? And so it allows you to have these very personalized interactions. It allows for other people to get to know you personally, but also allows you to do it at scale, which is a lot of what we're trying to do, is build relationships with people at scale. Okay, so you have that whole set of stuff, which I think is really hard to do, but really important around relationship building in a society that just feels more and more and more transactional. So then you flip all the way to the other side of it, and I'm a huge believer in product-led growth. I think I first heard the term product-led growth in like 2018. OpenView Partners was really popular, putting out all this content on product-led growth. They put out a bunch of data and analysis in like 2021 probably, about how not all, but many or maybe even most of the most successful public SaaS companies that had IPO'd over the previous, kind of 7, 8, 9 years, they were product-led growth businesses. And what made them really interesting and unique as companies was they had these self-service motions where a customer could sign up and begin to experience the product. The product could begin to go viral within the organization if it was user-based, or if it was more utility-based in the pricing, the usage of it would continue to spiral and kind of increase exponentially as the product itself got embedded into your processes and your motions. Well, so then, and this is a little bit of what I talked about 15.5 a moment ago. So then you now have this kind of very diversified user base inside of a single company. And so now we're in. Right. Awesome. PLG got us in. But now how do we turn this into a really big contract? And we go back to relationships. And this is the land and expand of account management. And so like Slack, let me see if I can remember this off the top of my head. They did 3 things where they identified the 3 blockers to getting an enterprise deal done. And they said, it's legal, it's IT, and it's finance. And so from our free version of Slack, the paid version needs to have value for legal, value for IT, and value for finance. And so the value for legal was, we'll save more than 10,000 messages. You'll get all your message history is going to be saved forever inside of Slack, as opposed to deleting after 10,000. For IT, you will get kind of one master administrative portal instead of having all of these separate, disparate accounts. It's just causing you IT chaos. Like you'll kind of master administration over things. And then for finance, single billing. So kind of similar to the IT value proposition, but you'll get single billing. And of course, we can go negotiate a contract and give you better rates, et cetera. So this whole thing of like taking a PLG motion to embed yourself into the product and create raving fans of the users. And then you can turn around and now go back to kind of senior leadership and say, okay, now it's time to do an enterprise deal. And very much that's built on relationships. So we kind of end up in this like process that starts with literally zero relationship whatsoever. Go to my website, sign up for a trial, don't talk to a human being, which is in a lot of ways how people want to buy. Anyway, and if your product is awesome, you'll gain a ton of traction, and then we get to turn back on the relationship side of it. So you get to these like two contradictory ideas, but at the end of the day, like nothing's changed about human beings. People buy from people, and so the relationships are really important. And this whole thing of just like automated emails and you know your AI talking to my AI, like it fundamentally creates a lot of challenges with building pipeline, and the authenticity that you get out of social, the authenticity you get out of relationships matters a lot at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think we really are going to see kind of a boomerang effect of the importance of those relationships, and not just in enterprise selling environments, but kind of at all levels, because there's already such a low appetite and disdain for kind of AI personalization gone wrong. And, right, whenever it's AI, that's kind of an example of where it's gone wrong, right? You shouldn't know. It should be so good that you think that person spent lots of time kind of researching
Yeah.
you and sitting in your environment and all of that. And I'm curious, talk about the inside sales kind of profile of folks that maybe didn't have the experience with kind of the in-person relationship building, or just relationship building in kind of an authentic way. I'm curious, what are the things that you find kind of helps them kind of do that? Are there any techniques, or I guess how do you coach and develop the team into that?
Yeah. Um, it's hard. I don't know that I have great answers for you. I think some of it is like hire for it, obviously, right? Like a lot of the things that we are wrestling through as kind of modern salespeople in 2025 are societal shifts. I have the experience all the time in my personal life and my professional life of people sending me a Slack message to say, "Can I call you?" Like they have my phone number, which by the way, like I have caller ID on my phone. Like I can see them coming through, and if I'm busy, I can just decline the call. But we shifted in society to where it's like rude to call somebody without their permission in advance. I think this is crazy. This is my like get off my lawn segment of the podcast. Um, uh, it slows everything down. It's not like if you and I were in an office together, you wouldn't be like, sending me a Slack message to be like, Brad, can I come over and talk to you at your desk for a minute? Like you would just walk over and you would stand there and I would look up to you and I'd be like, "Hey, Natalie, how are you today?" We would talk about the issue. So society has shifted in this kind of way. And there's um this so I like to go back to the heart of your question. In some ways, like I'm not sure because I just want to hire people who are comfortable making a phone call. Right. And part of this is like I'm hiring salespeople. Like maybe it's different if
Right.
you're
The
an engineering.
expectation used to be that everybody would make that phone call and had no qualms about it, but
Right.
that's the landscape you're in.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm late stage in this deal, and I sent them the proposal, and I want to know how they're feeling about my proposal. Well, I'm going to send them an email. Like, well, what if you just called them first? And chances are they're not going to answer the phone. 5% chance they're actually going to answer the phone and talk to you about their proposal. Maybe it's lower than 5, but it can take you 30 seconds to make the dial. And if the customer does answer the phone, you're going to have a way richer conversation about their response to the proposal. And more likely, they're just not going to answer the phone because it is 2025 and people don't answer the phones. And then you're going to send them the same email and you're going to wait 3 weeks and they still won't have replied to you. And then you're going to follow up again. Right. So, like, just call them. So, some of this is in a lot of ways, human beings haven't changed, right? Technology shapes human beings, but in a lot of ways, like people are still people. And there are a lot of people out there who want to work in sales and they love people and relationships and having conversations, and they're extroverts. And so I think some of it is normalizing within your company culture that like this is how we sell. Like your sales floor, which you probably don't have because stuff's all receives remote audited all the time now. But like your sales floor shouldn't be quiet. like the company culture should be that we are talking, because that's how you sell things, is you talk to people and you communicate value propositions, you understand pain points, and you build relationships and do that kind of stuff. So I think somebody like pulling this young person into a company culture that has a lot of the right behaviors ingrained in it already. And it's way harder to do. I've been remote first since COVID. At 15.5, we had offices, kind of a few different offices. We had this kind of hybrid hub model. And then COVID came. So we were in the office 5 days a week, right? And then COVID came. And I've now been remote first, for the last 4 or 5 years. And it's way harder to do these kind of things that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, it definitely is. You're bringing me back to my Forrester days. We used to do these like calling sprints and have like a couple days
Yeah.
a week. Everyone would be kind of on the phones and kind of the same area calling at the same time. And there was such a great energy to that. So it's how do you kind of mimic that and bring that to a virtual type of environment? I think a bit similarly to what we were saying earlier with kind of the CEO shift. Once they've experienced kind of the benefit of niching down, it's that much easier the next time around. I think that can happen at the rep level, right? Once you realize like, oh, I made a call, maybe I didn't want to make that call, but then the prospect answered and, we had a 20-minute conversation and I learned tons of stuff that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. That kind of paves the way for the next call and the next call. And so it's kind of proof is in the pudding, and then hopefully it kind of snowballs from there.
Yeah. And I will say real quick, this doesn't apply to prospecting and pipeline building, but it does when you're in deal, right? So you've got an open opportunity. You've been working this thing for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, maybe months. If you've got a longer sales cycle, text is huge, right? And so, the idea of building a texting relationship with your customer, I think is really valuable. And so, um, you know, people, I think it's again in 2025 much more accepting of receiving a text message from a salesperson or a business contact than it has to be a personal contact in order for somebody to text me. But I think like, you got you're doing your group demo and there's multiple stakeholders on the call, and then the call ends and then you shoot your point of contact a text and say, hey, give me some feedback. How did that go? You go back and forth a couple times over text, and then that opens the opportunity to call them. Just say, hey, I just thought I'd give you a call. It'd be easier to just kind of talk through the feedback on this thing. But it's like a lot of times, even mid deal, the person might have your phone number, probably doesn't have your phone number. You show up on their caller ID. Are they going to answer? So there's a texting side of this thing that can be really valuable as well as a helpful technique.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the way you're describing it, it's kind of those kinds of things that turn someone in from like a contact in your deal pipeline to a champion, right? And you get that kind of relationship. They give you feedback. You make them look good. You might learn some things personally about them and build kind of a person-to-person relationship. So it's kind of all of those kinds of things. And it really does make a big impact.
Yeah, it really does.
I'm curious to ask you a bit about the relationship between kind of sales and marketing in some of your environments. And again, kind of we're in, fast-moving climates, a lot coming at both kind of the sales and marketing orgs. How do you think about good alignment these days?
Yeah. To me, and to your point real quick on alignment, like that's harder obviously in a remote world too, right? Like there's some things that are better about remote. There's a lot that's harder about remote. And one of the things that's harder is alignment. And so, I lead sales and marketing today at Tidely. I led sales and marketing at 15.5 for a portion of my time. Over 5 years, I had a lot of things that I did at 15.5. There's some times that I held marketing, times that I didn't. So take this, and I'm a big OKRs fan as well. And so to me, there's this kind of like secret middle layer of OKRs that oftentimes gets completely ignored when you're with your leadership team and going through a strategic planning process of OKR creation. So what usually happens in my experience is we do company level OKRs. CEO leads the process. We do some kind of offsite as a leadership team, and we get together and we kumbaya for 2 or 3 days and go whitewater rafting, and then we pull together our OKRs for the next period. And then the CEO says, okay, now I need you all to go create your department level OKRs. And so now we're cascading down to the department level. And so what we end up doing is we create a whole set of sales KPIs or OKRs, and we create a whole set of marketing OKRs. And hopefully, fingers crossed, those are aligned because of some of the stuff that we talked about strategically at the CEO level or at the company level. But oftentimes they're not. And so what I really like to do is have this kind of middle layer between the department and the company that I just call the organizational level, for lack of a better term. And so, like, you've got product and engineering as an organization creating OKRs before you do engineering and before you do product. And you've got on the sales and marketing side, you've got sales and marketing coming together to create go-to-market organization OKRs. Hopefully, CX is also jumping in there as well, because so much of the point of customer success is revenue. So hopefully, it's those three functions that are coming together. So you end up with company level OKRs cascading down to go-to-market OKRs, which then cascade down to the department. And so if we bring up Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, remember the principles like putting your rocks in before your pebbles, before your sand. This ensures that before we get down to a sales department or a marketing department, we've put all the rocks in to the sales department jar first at the company level, and then the go-to-market level of the go-to-market org. Same thing on marketing, same thing on CX. And so by the time we're now into the sales department or the marketing department OKRs, all we've got room left for is like pebbles and sand. And that ensures that that department is going to be doing the most important thing that matter to go to market. And the go to market is doing the most, organization is doing the most important things that matter to the company. And so to me, like, that's probably the biggest place of alignment. A lot of people do, shared KPIs and all that kind of stuff. And like, that's a prerequisite. Like, you have to have shared KPIs. And you have to have a marketing leader who doesn't give a rip about creating pipeline, except that creating pipeline is in service of winning deals. And you have to have a sales leader who doesn't give a rip about winning deals, except that winning deals is in service of creating really successful customers who renew and expand. And so each department leader has to be thinking a step beyond. And this kind of methodology really helps with bringing that to the surface and ensuring that the KPIs are actually focused on the business outcomes that truly, truly matter.
Curious if you have any examples that come to mind that you could share to kind of help bring it to life of like what would be that kind of company OKR down to the go to market layer, down to the individual kind of sales versus marketing.
Yeah, that's a great question. So at Tithely, we're mostly going after small churches. Like, we have 50,000 customers. Most of these are very small churches that we sell to. And we sell giving software where people can make a donation to their church online, and we take a transaction fee on that. And then we have a set of subscription products that are sold on a month-to-month contract that we just call church management software. And it's kind of things like a little miniature CRM with a website and a mobile app and email and messaging, text messaging capabilities and a people database and that kind of stuff. And so we are wanting to primarily stay focused on our niche, to go back to niches, of the SMB church as our target customer. But we do have a product that is great for big enterprise churches, and we support some really big churches. We support the 5th largest church in the country as one of our customers. And so the sales team really wants to move up market and have an enterprise piece, not as the full deal, but like as a piece of what they're doing. So, all right, so sales wants to do enterprise. Awesome. Okay, so normally what happens is like sales is just going to go start doing enterprise stuff. They're going to turn around to marketing and they're going to be like, okay, marketing, now we need you to put this event for us. Put together this event for us. And marketing's like, we don't have any capacity to put together an event. We've put all of our capacity into supporting the SMBs, right? Which is like kind of their job, to support the SMBs. So, okay, so now we're out of alignment because sales wanted to do this thing and they never communicated it up to marketing and go to market, let alone up to the company. So what should happen, and this is what we're doing at Tithely right now, is we're saying, okay, at the company level, enterprise, is this a company level priority? No, it's actually not. If we look at the 5 most important things we need to do as a company, it's not enterprise. So we're not going to put it into the mix of the company things. All right. Now let's move to go-to-market. This is one of the 5 most important things that we need to do at the go-to-market level. It may or may not be, but the fact that we're talking about it during our strategic planning sessions is going to ensure that marketing is going to set aside some resources to go work on this thing. And maybe it does make it into our top 5. And now if it makes it into our, let's put it in our top 5 because of the question that you asked, and we'll make it more clear. Okay, so now, all right, we're going to go after enterprise. It's one of our 5 OKRs for go-to-market for the second half of 2020. Hooray. All right, well, what do we need to do to successfully win an enterprise? Well, first thing we got to do is create a pipeline. So how are we going to create our pipeline? All right, well, we want to do some events. Let's brainstorm some events that we can do. Okay, we want to do these 3 dinners, and we're going to go take the people to the World Series over here, and we'll do a golf tournament over there. Hooray. All right, marketing. Can you operate and run those things? Great. What are the KPIs for those? How much pipeline are we going to get from them? How many attendees do we need to have? So we got to set our KPIs for that. Okay, well, great. We need people to show up. Sales. We need you to be responsible for getting half of the attendees to show up. We on the marketing side will do our marketing thing and try to get half of them to show up. You got to get the other half to show up. Oh, by the way, we need to sell some sponsorships for our golf thing because this golf thing is going to be expensive. And we don't have the marketing budget to pay for that. Who's going to go sell a sponsorship? Well, that's in nobody's job description. Hey, sales rep, you think you can go sell a sponsorship to one of our partners? Great. I'll go do that. I've never done it before, but if I don't do it, we don't get to go chase this enterprise thing and have our golf tournaments. I'm like, great, I'll go sell a sponsorship now. And so now by the time you get down to the department level, you've got the sales team like on the hook for building pipeline, getting people to show up to the events, selling sponsorships, which they get paid no compensation for. I'm making all this up, by the way. And of course, they're going to have a quota for the number of deals that they're going to close. And marketing is on the hook for creating these 3 events and these 3 pieces of product collateral and this product marketing value proposition. It's going to go on the website for how we can support enterprise churches. And now we've got an enterprise play. So that's probably a good example of how it all works together.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great example. And I love that it becomes a tool for like all the important things, right? Decision-making, prioritization, alignment. And then like at the very end, as you were describing, is kind of that buy-in and accountability, which I think is often one of the big friction points between kind of the sales and marketing function. Yeah. So you can see where your approach really helps make sure everyone's rowing in the same direction and understands like why they're rowing in that direction to begin with.
And Patrick Lencioni in 5 Dysfunctional Team, in all of his books, like he does such a great job of describing these ideas of like disagree and commit. And like we need alignment, not consensus. Right. And just these principles around the fact that like get everybody together. And you're going to get some people who think that going after enterprise is a dumb idea and we shouldn't be doing it as a business. And, you know, maybe they actually win the day. But oftentimes the fact that they had their voice heard, they got to hear other people talk about why this stuff matters. They felt like they were a part of the process. They're now going to be committed. And what Lencioni talks about is that what we generally do is the coworkers who are not bought in, they don't sabotage it through like proactive sabotaging efforts. They sabotage it through apathy. Like they just don't do their piece of it, or they don't do a good job on their piece of it. Like, you know, we need a reservation at some restaurant for the thing. And like, they don't, I called 2 restaurants. They were booked. I don't know. What, did you call 7 more and get this thing done? I'm busy with other stuff. Right. And like, well, now we were screwed on having an event and we got to delay our event for another 3 months and whatever. So you mitigate a lot of that risk of sabotaging through apathy when people get an opportunity to be part of the process.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I'm curious in one other area. We've talked a lot about kind of inside the go-to-market function, but zooming out a bit and thinking of kind of the CEO mindset. Mm-hmm. Is there something that you feel would benefit CEOs to kind of think about more, understand kind of differently, just in your experience from the different roles that you've had?
Oh, that's a good question. So there's a few things that come to mind for me. Can I go with more than one?
You can.
You alluded to one of these earlier. Things are always way more complicated than we realize. Like, I joined Tidely as the CRO about a year ago. And I mean, I do this in my team. Um, and I'll go talk to somebody who's on the front lines of getting the work done. And I'm like, oh, this is way more complicated than I realized. And like, some of it's self-inflicted complicated because our CRM is just too busy and whatever. Right. And some of it is just like, no, the process of like bidding in Google search is really complex and strategic. And it's not just like, put in $10,000 and say, go win me church management. Like, that's not how Google works. Like, there's real science and skill and expertise in this craft. And, CEOs haven't done all the jobs inside of a company. I've actually never run paid search in my entire life, but I'm now managing the guy who's managing the guy who does. And so when we get on the front lines of things, we realize just how much more complicated everything actually is. And at minimum, I think it gives CEOs like a deeper level of appreciation for reality, rather than having their heads in the sand on how easy everything is going to go. So that's that. I think the next one, especially as we to go back to our conversation around like nailing a niche and like building a new product offering or starting a new company from scratch. It's so easy to say, okay, well, we've got product market fit now. We're ready to go scale. And then all the resources shift over to sales and marketing. And then you fast forward a couple of years down the road and the market shifted and the competitors have built more stuff. And now your product has maybe lost product market fit at worst. Or maybe at best, it's just moved from best product in the market to second or third or fourth in the market. So I'm a huge believer that the best product wins at the end of the day. There's certainly exceptions to that when you can win just by having an incredible brand. But that is pretty rare. Usually if you give people enough time, buyers are not that dumb. People are smart and they tend at the end of the day to gravitate to the best product. And if you're in a subscription model, you'll build this big revenue base and then your churn rate will outpace your customer acquisition rate. And now you're just in a death spiral with your net revenue retention or net dollar retention, sitting under 100%. And it is really, really hard to grow a business at that point because the treadmill of churn is just moving way too fast and you can't keep up pace on customer acquisition. So all that is to say, build an incredible product. And then as you're building that incredible product, especially if you're in this product-led growth world, but the best way to study and understand customer behavior and user behavior is from inside the product, which means that the product itself has to be instrumented in a way that it can be measured. And this is really hard to do, but in my experience, product and engineering teams are oftentimes thinking about the best way to create the user experience and solve the customer's problem, which is awesome and arguably the most important thing. And so as they're coding it, that's the focus. But they're not coding with the focus on, and also, how do we instrument this thing in such a way that we can measure it? Because the ability to measure it is what drives a lot of your ability to iterate and build better functionality and understand where customers are getting stuck. If you're on any kind of a free trial motion like Tidely is, converting free trials into paying customers is so much about understanding these customer journeys, the first time use experiences. When you're trying to understand churn and why people don't expand, so much of it is built in there. So coding the product in such a way that is built to be measured, and measured, by idiots like myself who just like, I can't code the stuff, right? But I can read a dashboard. So people like me.
Yeah, I think all of those are fantastic. I think the point around kind of having that visibility, whether it is kind of PLG and you need it in the product or kind of enterprise sales, at least having all the right kind of metrics and tracking and dashboards and having that set up from the start. Going back to where we started at the beginning of the conversation,
Yep.
they could be the unsexy, not as fun things to work on, but they can
That's
have
right.
such a big impact and like ultimately give you what you need to make the right decisions to be successful.
Yeah, that's right. We came full circle. What's sexier, launching a product or measuring the product?
Exactly.
Launching it, not
But which one
measuring.
becomes more critical ultimately in the long run? Right. You need to prioritize. Well, that's probably a great place to wrap, Brad. This has been a fantastic discussion. So thank you so much for everything that you've shared.
Absolutely. Thank you much for having me on.
Great to have you. And thank you to everybody listening. I know I loved hearing about so much of what Brad shared around, the go-to-market, goal setting and his process there. Some really great insights around, the CEO's role in driving that. And I love what you said about kind of ultimately the best product still wins, because it's all an uphill battle if you don't have a really strong offering. So if today's episode gave you, our listeners, any valuable insights, and I'm sure that it did, please share this with someone, a CEO, a founder, go-to-market leader. We know that sharing these kinds of real-world insights helps us scale smarter, build stronger, and create more resilient go-to-market strategies. So thank you again, Brad. And this has been another amazing discussion on Shift and Thrive. I'll see you all next time. That's a wrap for this week's episode. For show notes and more, visit shiftandthrivepodcast.com. A special thank you to our sponsor, Magnitude Consulting, bringing you the thinking power of a growth consultancy and the getting it done power of a full-service marketing agency to help B2B companies fuel their growth. For more information on Magnitude and to get your complimentary transformation readiness assessment, visit magnitudeconsulting.com/getready. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.